it is important that we look at the scale of this. I mean, the adaptation grant was designed, because it was out of capital money, it had to be designed to cover capital costs. So PPE and things like that couldn't be covered because of government financing rules out of the adaptation. So it had to be an asset that was left in. So a Perspex screen could be covered, but a mask couldn't. A hand sanitizer unit could be covered, but the hand sanitizer liquid couldn't. So, in terms of that's just because it's capital funding that we had to allocate, and we were trying to get it out to as many businesses as we could, as quickly as we could, to help cover that. But the amount of money that for example, that a non-food serving pub get, I think, is €1,000. The restaurant would be €2,500. I think it's important that in terms of, that's not going to be the difference between survival and not survival for these businesses. In terms of, and the level of that funding, is probably dwarfed by what's available through CRSS, and is definitely dwarfed through the extended wage subsidy scheme, etc. So, in terms of there's that. I don't want people to think that, in terms of that, I've been excluded, so I'm going to miss out on 5 or 10 or 15,000 euros or anything like that, because that wasn't what the fund was there. And so it is a relatively small amount of money, and it can only be drawn then if the business has spent money on those type of assets. And that's just a requirement.
In the current climate, 500,000 euro could mean a lot to these businesses. And, when they see their neighbour, competing for the same lunchtime market, but being able to get a bit of a competitive advantage because they can avail of this grant, it does make a difference. So I'd really ask for it to be revisited. Last question in my 30 seconds. The 55 million contingency funding from the budget, any idea when or how that might be spent, and which stakeholders will be consulted in the allocation of that 55 million? In terms of in terms of consultation, we're listening to the challenges and industry input all the time. We've a call that Niall sits on with us, that we with all of the industry bodies represented on it every 2 weeks. We're listening to input on that. So in terms of our consultation with industry is extensive. When you get into designing the detail of funds and how funds work, in terms of that just needs. That you can't do that in a big huge committee. You need a group of experts. There's a whole bunch of EU legislation that gets into account. So we will be doing that with our department, based on the input that we've got from industry, based on the other government supports that are there, and we're working, and we'll be working through that. In terms of when when we will be, it will be Q1 of next year when we'll be announcing the details. As I say, we've got 4 schemes underway at the moment. We have the adaptation scheme. We're administering the B&B restart scheme. We're administering the coach tourism scheme for 10 million, and now we have the inbound agent scheme for 10 million. So there is a bunch of, between those schemes, we've got 54 million that we're trying to get out to businesses, and we will work on the next 55 million. We have started working on designing the scheme based on all the inputs we're getting from industry, and we will, we'll hope to have some, further news on that in Q1. But that, I'm not going to say we're going to have the detail for the full 55 million in Q1, because we may end up doing that as a number of different schemes. We're looking at all the options at this stage, and so we may end up being phased, because we don't know what the challenges businesses are going to have later on in the year, across next year as well.